the Chairman Ashok Kumar Gupta of the Competition Commission and all its members. I can see some of the former chairmen and members of the Competition Commission. Chairman of NAFRA, Dr. Rajebhushan Pandey. Formerly of IBBI, Ms. Sahu. And all eminent and invited guests, a very good morning. And needless to say, I've been closely following the Competition Commission much before I even became a minister. The topic interests me, but post that, I've had definitely a lot of interaction with the Competition Commission. And today, at a time when it is entering its teens, I wish the Competition Commission all the very best, particularly because you are entering the teens, but India is moving towards the 25 years for India at 100, the Amrit Kal as we call it, the 25 years which are going to lead India to stand up as a leading and well-structured economy. So I would think these 25 years are coinciding with your teenage, and you will have a lot more young, fresh and refreshing thoughts to make the relevance of Competition Commission all the more. So I wish you all the very best, even at the start. And these are very challenging times. And I'll also add a word of appreciation for the Competition Commission in the last 2 years for having stood up to the challenges and in fact met the challenges with a lot more positivity, that even despite the COVID, despite the difficulties for the economy, and despite the pangs of having to come out of it with a greater rigor, Competition Commission has actually stood up to positively engage with those stakeholders and give that strength that fair market competition is what you stand for, and even during the pandemic, that's what you stood for. So I do really appreciate the role the Competition Commission has played in these 2 years. And therefore, these 2 years we couldn't meet in person. We are meeting in person today, and that itself gives you a feeling that things are getting to be normal and better, in that now we have the experience of the 2 years behind us, but lessons from there can always give us an opportunity to better our performance of earlier times. So I do honestly appreciate the role played by the Competition Commission under the leadership of Ashok Kumar Gupta. Today, many of the challenges which a rigorous regulator like Competition Commission will have to be facing have been very elaborately narrated by both the speakers before me, so I don't need to get into those details. However, I would like to highlight a few which I think are presently the challenge. Probably the Commission is well fitted to take care of these challenges, and probably it also is simultaneously acquiring quite a lot of skill sets, which in a transitioning economy like India, moving from the traditional ways of doing business to more technology-driven businesses, more digitized economy. So the challenges are also getting more complex, more nuanced, and more technology-driven. So the Competition Commission itself will have to have such skill sets that you're never behind the curve, but you're on the top of issues. So I would think in that context, whilst there may be very many issues if you get into the details, but I would like to largely focus on 3 things, which in an Indian economy of today, given the tendency that we want to, and this is actively facilitated by the government also, that we want the recovery from the pandemic to be distinctly clear and speedy, but equally we are also encouraging scaling up We want companies to be able to stand up, scale up, and meet the newer challenges of India. Now, in the banking sector, for instance, I've been saying that we need many more large banks in India. And one of the things that in 2019-20 we did was to get more banks which are compatible in nature to come together, and the amalgamation process happened even during the COVID, only because we wanted to have that scaling up advantage for meeting up large growing industries' demands. So now the scaling up is a proposition before us which is actively happening in the market, and therefore I would think the Competition Commission will have to be fairly understanding of what is happening there, and not just mergers and acquisition, but also in general as to what is the scaling up leading to. And therefore I would think mergers and acquisition would be still one of the things on which I will flag the attention of the Competition Commission, saying there is a need for your proactive understanding of whatever is developing in the name of mergers and acquisition, proactive understanding. But I'm not asking you to straight away engage based on what you've understood, but of course that knowledge that you keep acquiring by the side is also going to inform you better when you're handling cases. Similar is the problem today. It's not a new feature, but in today's context, when economies are trying to recover, when, for instance, government is also giving a very big accent on infrastructure, and infrastructure being the formulation through which we want the economy to come back to growing at a very good number, 8% or above. So when infrastructure get an accent, and also the due money required from the government side, there is also going to be a lot of activity on the ground in the non-governmental side. So cartelization can be a challenge. Cartelization is going to be a challenge also because the scaling up and also growing into areas which are of great demand and which are also going to be in demand. So obviously in demand, very temptingly leading to a situation where cartelization can play a possible threat, or to also, now you hear quite a few grievances, if I may put it that way, that the input costs of materials have gone up, in spite of India having quite a big capacity to meet both India's own demands and also to be able to export from India. However, the situation is such that because of the global shortage of commodities, the raw material and such commodities which are so critical at a transitional stage for any economy are becoming rarer. Also because the global disruption in the value chains and supply chains are so severely affected, not because of the pandemic, not just because of the pandemic, but also because of the war situation prevailing in Eastern Europe. So, the short supply, two, the disruption to the supply, and many other factors, as in the case of the chip availability for, let's say, the automobile industry, you have disruptions of various kinds. Are chips available? Yes, suppose they are available. Are they in a position to reach to the various destinations in time for the buyers and the consumers to get it? So there are very many stages at which disruptions are coming in. Now, are they genuinely the disruption caused by these disruptions of COVID or disruptions caused because of the war? There is a need to look into this game, look into this disruption, look into these causes for short supply, and also to make sure and be assured that there are no monopolistic or, let us say, a duopolistic situation causing either price spikes or supply manipulations. So I would think cartelization is the larger word I'm using, because cartelization by itself is a self-explanatory word, but I'm bringing in smaller elements of other things which eventually make commodities more expensive. The third challenge, which was also recognized probably by Secretary Verma when he spoke, is the digitization. And even there, I think the challenge before the Competition Commission is something which cannot be defined in just one category. The digitization is again something which India prides itself. India has made a brand name for itself, whether it is in the fintech area or the payments area, or even in the way in which the Industrial Revolution 4.0, as they would call it, or Web 3, as we call it now, adapting very many digital tools, whether it is your artificial intelligence, whether the Internet of Things. Now you can see concrete benefits coming to those who are adept at using these things. And I, for one, will certainly say the story of Dr. Ajay Bhushan Pandey, in the form of the way in which he brought in Aadhaar, stood before the Honorable Supreme Court and explained the whole situation as to what benefit it is going to give to the Indian economy. And it's not a fear something kind of an object. It is something which is necessary. And that was a milestone of explaining why digitization and why Aadhaar-based identity are all going to help India leapfrog to higher levels of growth. So if that was explained by Dr. Ajay Bhushan Pandey, who's now heading the NAFRA, the digitization itself, the creation of the India stack itself, the role of NCPI itself, NPCI, National Payments Corporation of India itself, is a story on how India can be on the top of the digital revolution. But yet, for the Competition Commission, that is where it also has to have the skill sets to be on the top of what actually is happening. So I think if I said mergers and acquisition in a changing India, I said cartelization and also brought in monopoly and duopoly into it. I would also talk about digitization and its benefits which are reaching out to us, and also saw how it has actually helped the government to reach out to people even at a time of pandemic. The job remains for the Competition Commission to make sure that it understands the nuances of what is happening in the digital era. And through digital era, or through the tools of digitization, are the market forces being effectively used, fairly used, transparently used for the benefit of the consumer, or is there something which raises a question? Earlier, the approach would have been just for one sector of retail, the concern for the digital era coming into our economy and the retail area being a question would have been something which was stated earlier, but I would think that challenge is now spread across to several domains. So that is one other thing which I will certainly flag off during this annual day talk. So calibrated challenges, calibrated responses are both the reality before us. I would think the Competition Commission should and have a greater understanding and therefore a greater leverage to see how best the digitization moving across various sectors is going to have an impact, and question yourselves if that is an area in which you are adequately ready to understand the challenges. And therefore I would think on all these counts, the Competition Commission should first of all have a session to understand whether it is adequately endowed to meet these challenges. Then comes the question of advocacy. I was glad to have joined in the opening of an office in Chennai, today again in Kolkata. And I'm also happy that the booklets for educating people who are market operators or the stakeholders for a fair competition environment are being produced in regional languages. Learning about these areas, and I would definitely want to recognize the role Mr. Sahu played when he was part of the government. I have benefited immensely from his periodic briefing. He's thoroughly informed on the matter. And I will certainly thank you for all the role that you played. There are many more such people. I don't want to ignore the presence of many others who I'm not naming. But the wealth of information that is out there will have to be somewhere documented and kept as your data bank, even as you're talking about advocacy. FAQs, even from the point of view of Competition Commission. FAQs so that it benefits those who are going to ask fair questions of what the Competition Commission can do for them and what they would expect them to do, I would think will take us a very big way forward in being able to say what is the power that the Commission has. And I would call it as a progressive power. It's not regressive. It's not a regulator in that sense. Yes, it is a regulator when it has to stand up to meet unfair practice or abuse of a dominant position, as you would refer to. That happens frequently. Abuse of a dominant position does happen frequently. There you will have to stand up with firmness. So as a regulator, to stand up to a challenge with firmness is a good feature of a regulator, but that doesn't make you regressive. You're doing your job. But to be proactive and progressive is what is going to minimize the number of times when you'll have to take the lathi and stand up and say, no, this is not fair. So by spreading more information about the potential with which you work, and spread the information more on a ready-to-use basis. Not information when somebody comes in distress to you to say, yeah, these are the information we have. Keep it out there. You have both mobile and also a desktop version of all the programs that you're doing. You should have, from the instances that you have had earlier, deriving from them FAQs put out for the various situations and the permutation and combination of things which can result in a uncertainty in the mind of the stakeholder. So FAQs, I would think, are a permanent advocacy tool. You don't have to go distributing books. Yes, do that as well. But if it is available when I want it, it is available for me. And that is something which you have to do, and every one of your meetings you may want to refer to, it's available. And every now and then you may want to call the media to say, it is available, are you all in touch with it? And lastly, I appreciate the Competition Commission, particularly during the pandemic, for having been very sensitive about the medium and small scale enterprises and the difficulties that they face could have really resulted in big trouble for them. But the Competition Commission was proactive, kept informing them as to what they can look up to and survive the day. They've all come out of it. Many of them have come out of it, but there could also be one or two of them who are still under the weather. But the government from its side is addressing the concerns. So the sensitivity that you showed makes me say, and therefore conclude my speech, if I can say that, is be sensitive but be firm. And that would probably make the Competition Commission as an exemplary institution, an exemplar in regulators in this era when economies are trying to use this transition from COVID-affected economy, the yet-to-come transition from the post-war, whenever it is, and the disruptions which have resulted in great deal of challenges for all of us. I wish the Competition Commission all the very best. Thank you.